You know that feeling when you're reading an academic paper, and even though you get all the words, you just feel lost? Well, the problem probably isn't the ideas themselves. It's the lack of a map. Today, we're talking about that map. It's a tool called signposting, and it's absolutely essential for turning a bunch of complex ideas into a clear, easy-to-follow journey for your reader.
Let's just run with this idea for a second. Imagine your argument is a road trip. You're in the driver's seat, you know exactly where you're going. But your reader, they're in the passenger seat, just along for the ride. And without clear signs telling them, hey, we're about to make a sharp left turn, or look, here's a key landmark, they are going to get completely and hopelessly lost. Well, signposting phrases, those are your road signs.
Okay, so let's get into our academic roadmap and talk about why having a guide is so critical. See, an academic argument is rarely a straight shot down the highway. It's more like a winding country road, full of complex turns and intersections. Your argument needs a guide. And to really see why, let's first imagine what that journey is like with no map at all.
And this right here is the biggest danger. You could have the most amazing, groundbreaking ideas, but if you don't connect them for your reader, they just feel like a random list of facts. It's confusing. Your audience is left sitting there trying to figure out how point A connects to point B, and let's be honest, they'll probably just give up. Signposting is what builds the bridges between your ideas, turning them into one single solid structure.
So, if signposting is all about building those bridges, what are the rules for building them right? Well, that leads us right to the rules of the road, creating cohesion. This is all about making a logical flow of your argument so smooth, so clear, that it's basically impossible for your reader to get lost.
A really good signpost is kind of like a GPS for your argument. It's doing three jobs at once. First, it quickly reminds the reader where you've just been. Then, it tells them exactly where you are in the argument right now, and finally, it gives them a heads up about where you're going next. This is what makes the whole journey feel completely seamless.
Just look at the difference this makes in the real world. On the left, what do we have? 4 separate facts. They feel like puzzle pieces just thrown on a table. They seem related, but how? It's not clear. Now look at the right. With just 2 simple little phrases, however, and as a result of, the logic becomes crystal clear. First, we see a contrast. Then we see cause and effect. It's the exact same information, but now it's a powerful connected argument.
Okay, so what do these signs actually look like? Well, just like real road signs are grouped into different types, warning signs, speed limit signs, direction signs, signposting phrases can be grouped by what they do logically. So let's decode the 4 main categories you're going to need for pretty much any academic journey.
First up, we've got sequential signposts. Think of these as your mile markers on the highway. They're perfect when you need to lay out a series of steps or a list of reasons. Like, firstly, we'll look at the historical data. Subsequently, we'll analyze the survey results. And finally, we will draw our conclusions. See? Your reader always knows exactly where they are on the map.
Next up, we have contrastive signs. And these are a big one. This is your U-turn ahead signal. These words are really the engine of critical thinking. When you use a word like however, you're telling your reader, hold on, I'm not just giving you one side of the story. You're showing that you're engaging with a counter-argument, which, by the way, makes your own position so much stronger.
Third, we have illustrative signposts. I like to think of these as the scenic viewpoint signs on your road trip. They tell the reader, okay, we've been talking about this big abstract theory. Now let's zoom in and look at a real-world example. Phrases like, for instance, or to illustrate, make those big ideas tangible and so much easier to understand.
And finally, causal signposts. These are the powerhouse, the logical engine of your argument. They explicitly connect a cause to an effect. When you say therefore or consequently, you're not just stating 2 different facts next to each other. You're proving that one thing led to the other. And that is what makes your reasoning feel totally undeniable.
And here it is, all in one place, your signposting cheat sheet. You've got your signs for putting things in order, for changing direction, for giving examples, and for showing a direct result. Honestly, this is the basic toolkit you'll need to guide a reader through almost any argument you can think of.
All right, so once you've got these basic signs down, it's time to level up and learn how to navigate like a pro. And what that means is understanding the really crucial difference between guiding your reader on the big main highways of your argument versus the little local streets inside each neighborhood. And this difference is so important. Major signposts are like those giant green highway signs that tell you you're about to enter a totally new section. They often use a whole phrase like, having established the problem, we will now turn to the proposed solutions. But minor signposts, on the other hand, are like the little street signs that guide you turn by turn within one single paragraph. They're usually just single words like furthermore or also to connect one sentence smoothly to the next. And you absolutely need both to be a great guide. Of course, just like with any journey, there are always some potential wrong turns. Using these signs well also means knowing what the common mistakes are, so you don't accidentally lead your poor reader down a dead-end street.
There are two really common ways to get your reader lost. The first is over-signposting. This is when you start almost every sentence with a transition word. It ends up sounding clunky and robotic, like a GPS that just won't shut up. The second big danger is mismatching the sign to the turn. Using a word like however when there's no actual contrast. That's like putting up a sharp left turn sign on a perfectly straight road. It doesn't help. It just creates confusion.
So, what's the secret? It's simple. Don't just sprinkle these words everywhere. You want to use them strategically, at the pivot points, those exact moments where your logic shifts or introduces a contrast or draws a conclusion. It's all about being precise and deliberate, not just mechanical.
So after navigating all these different roads and avoiding the wrong turns, we finally arrive at our destination, confident communication. Because mastering signposting isn't just some neat writing trick. It has some really incredible rewards for you, both as a thinker and a communicator.
When you learn to signpost well, your work immediately sounds more polished and professional. Your arguments become way more persuasive because the logic is just so easy to follow. But I think the most important thing is this. It shows your audience that you are in complete control of your ideas. You're not just listing facts. You're masterfully guiding them through a sophisticated line of thought.
Okay, so here's a little challenge for you. The next time you're in a class or watching a presentation, I want you to actively listen for these signposts. Just notice how often experienced speakers use words like however, therefore, and for instance, to structure their thoughts and to guide you. I promise you'll start hearing them everywhere. And that brings us to the end of our trip. So the real question now is, what are you going to do with this map? Think about your own writing. What's the first road sign, maybe a consequently or for instance, that you can strategically add to make your logic just a little bit clearer? Happy navigating!